welcome back to Morning Coffee. It's Al and Joe, and it's RBN Television. We have a great hot topic
I
today.
know. I'm
It's
looking forward to
fantastic.
this. Two great guests.
Absolutely. First of all, it's part of the expert series, with Workcred, which is Dr. Roy Swift. It's
Very important.
And Roy is the executive director of Workcred, and he's bringing a special person. Both of us, you and I, know real well. Jane Oates, who's involved with WorkingNation, and really, thank you so much for joining us, both of you today. And Roy, let's start with you. Why don't you tell our viewers again a little bit about Workcred and what your organization does before we bring in Jane?
Well, the elevator speech for Workcred is that looking at the quality, market value, and effectiveness of workforce credentials. And today, one of the things that we feel is very important when we talk about credentials, it's not just credentials, it's credentials for everyone, whether individual with a disability, a person with a PhD. I mean, it goes across, because we know a lot of times credentials are gotten, especially industry certifications, even when you have a bachelor's, master's, or a PhD, that the credential is the added value to getting the particular job that you want. And we want the general public to know that, but particularly today, we want to talk about individuals with disabilities and how really the workforce movement and trend is moving toward where we think that this is going to enhance more hiring with quality jobs with good pay.
And Jane, welcome again to Morning Coffee. You're calling from California. We're so appreciative
Really
of you
appreciate
getting up
that.
for us today. And when you and I talked before, one of the things we discussed is how people with disabilities sometimes get overlooked.
Sure.
Because they haven't got a bachelor's degree or higher education, but they have certain skill sets. And that's one thing that credentialing can do. It can actually take and put people with disabilities.
Opens doors for people with disabilities.
Them.
That's terrific. Great.
So Jane, how are you this morning?
I'm great. Thanks so much, Joe. Great to see you and Al.
Oh, good.
And always my friend Roy.
Oh, yeah,
Total
absolutely.
pleasure.
It's so much. So let's discuss that a little bit about credentialing and certifications and how it does open doors for people with disabilities.
Well, the first thing, Joe, is it's a quicker road to getting a job. So, many people with disabilities have academic deficits. They don't read very well. They can't write very well. They may have math deficits. But that's all a negative way to look at it. They have amazing skills, and credentials allow them a road to prove that they have those skills through quality assessments and to get the job that they want.
Wow.
And the federal government is really seeing this too. And I know Jane can talk about this, the executive order that says that skills should be looked at first. And certainly you can look at degrees, but they want the federal agencies to begin looking at what do the skills of that person really bring to that federal agency, regardless of academic preparation. I don't know, Jane.
No, that's right. And not only has the federal government done it, and your viewers should recognize that about 60% of all federal jobs are outside the greater Washington, D.C. area. So there are federal jobs in all 50 states. The other piece is that this is not a political issue. You may say we're saying this because President Biden's in office. That's not the case at all. The fact is that red and blue states, governors have come together and done the same thing, from Utah to Maryland, now in your neighboring state of Pennsylvania. I mean, the reality was an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree, while critically important and always going to be necessary for some jobs, have become the de facto thing to put in a job description. Degree required, degree preferred, and it has really eliminated incredible talent.
Jane, how is your organization, WorkingNation, helping open doors for people with disabilities?
Well, I would say two things, Al. One is that we're a proud member of the movement with Opportunity at Work about STARS, taking the degree requirement away from those job descriptions where it's really not necessary. And second, we partnered last year with Disability In, an organization that helps businesses both attract and track and retain their employees with disabilities. So, we've done a number of videos, a number of interviews, a number of articles to kind of humanize this issue, but also to present the hiring of people with disabilities as a business imperative. We've helped make the business case for it. These are talented people. It's not a feel-good thing. It's not a thing to do because you want to be a good corporate citizen, to feel sorry for these poor people. It's a business necessity. These are real people with incredible talent. And, businesses have to work around how do you make sure that they don't lose their benefits. Roy mentioned, he started by saying the federal government. Federal government and states are so great because they have tremendous benefit packages. And many people with disabilities shy away from taking a full-time job because they lose their medical benefit. And their conditions are so expensive that they're afraid to risk going on an employer plan when they get laid off and be without benefits for a few months.
Wow.
That's so
Really
important. Do you think, Jane, more people in the private sector being more open to looking at certifications as a way to measure skill set rather than academics?
I really see a growing trend there, Joe. I don't think we're where we need to be, but I think people started a lot with entry level jobs. And now I hope they look at removing that degree requirement for incumbent workers. People are already loyal employees of that company who still don't have a degree, but have the skills that they learned on the job, and promote them. I think that promotion piece has been really a problem, and it's caused many, what I would call entry-level workers to move to other employers for something silly like 50 cents an hour, rather than staying with an employer they know and trust because they can be promoted.
And the certification bodies are beginning to develop career pathways. It used to be that the certifications were very tied to academic degrees, and then you get the certification. That's particularly, of course, true in healthcare. But many are deciding that it's important to get people into the industry, and so they're just requiring experience with no degree, or they'll say associate degree with 3 years of experience, a bachelor's degree with 1 year experience. So they're trying to open up to the wider community. And so where in the past there may not have been a certification that fit an individual with disabilities, but more and more there is. The behavioral analysts, a lot of people spend years being wonderful aides on mental health wards, and all they have to show with it is that they had that experience. Well, the Behavioral Analyst Certification Board now is going to try to recognize that level of individual by having a certification for what they call an associate behavioral analyst to give credibility and then also intrinsic motivation that maybe they can move up to a higher level. So we hear about career pathways, degree pathways in the university community, but the industry certifications are beginning to follow suit with building their own pathways, sometimes aligned with academics, sometimes not aligned with academic in this regard. But this is a real positive sign in the certification community too.
One of the things that I think is so important is when we started even this expert series with Workcred, Roy, is the fact that now that there's more emphasis on accreditation and really worthwhile certifications that the private sector can see. So it's not just a certificate sitting on the wall that means nothing.
Big deal.
And it's a big deal now to get certain certifications because they really mean something.
Well, and I want to
Yes,
add, while we have both you and Jane on, the landscape has changed. Now that everybody has a Zoom account, we all know how to do telecommuting. Now that that's part of the nature of how, in your opinion, has that changed the landscape, the professional landscape for people with disabilities?
Well, I think remote and hybrid work is really a game changer for people with disabilities. I mean, for so many years, we've heard from employers, they were nervous about the accommodations they would need, about the legal liability, if something would happen, or if someone, even with a severe disability, needed an aide with them. Now, that can all be taken care of at their home, and they can show just the positives of their abilities. And I think it's starting already. I think it will really grow because right now, every business person is looking for talent. Everywhere you go, you see help wanted signs. Everybody you talk to is saying they can't find talent. Well, here's an invisible talent pool that they can take advantage of right away. And as you said, Al, the idea of remote work removes all of the fears, necessary or unnecessary, that these employers had.
Yeah, and particularly in the area of IT, where you can learn very specific technical skills in this regard, and can readily be done at home without going outside the house in this regard. So the remote certainly has opened up a lot of possibilities in this regard.
And it takes away, some people with disabilities have a real social problem. They can't interact well with people, whether they're people on the spectrum or whether they're just people with behavioral issues. They don't like the crowd. They get sensory overload. They can adapt. Their home environment can be exactly the best work environment for them.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's encouraging.
And I also want to say that we've been talking about the certifications and the skills, but I always have to bring up my identical twin daughters who didn't speak until age 4 because they had twin talk, and they were on IEPs from kindergarten through the 12th grade. And we, as parents with children with learning disability, were saying, is there a college for them? And we struggled, but luckily we found some people who understood what some of the good programs are. And I have to do a shout out for Southern Illinois University called the Achieve program, where my twin daughters went, and a university of 25,000, which really worried us a lot, with children who have difficulties getting lost and shuffle. They didn't. They were taken care of. They were given notes from other students. That was part of the program. Now, one twin is an MSW, social worker, working with developmental disability, and the other one is a director of a preschool. And it just goes to show you that sometimes we don't have as high expectations as we should have for our children who are having difficulties, that there is a place for everyone. I tell people that all the time. It's a matter of finding it in this regard. So I also wanted to bring up the example. My wife had surgery at Walter Reed recently, and I went to the cafeteria to get my food, and I went to check out, and I had a styrofoam that was closed, which had a bad news hamburger and French fries in it, but this person who was checking me out was deaf. And so she motioned to me that she had to see everything, which was not a problem. I opened up the styrofoam, she did her job, and that small accommodation of just having to see it, you can't just verbally tell it, was no big deal. And she was having a productive type of job that was giving her adequate salary. It really hit me the other day when that happened.
Wow, that's quite a story. Roy and Jane, we need to wrap, and I can't tell you how wonderful it's been for you to be here on the program and explain opportunities for people with disabilities. It's a message we can't get enough of. Real quick, starting with you, Roy, how do people learn more about Workcred?
Well, they go to our website, workcred.org, to find out the various programs that we're in. We particularly think that the combination of looking at industry credentials and academic degrees, in the whole adage, the sum is greater than its parts. We are working with a lot of community colleges looking at certification degree pathways. So our website is probably the best, and certainly we have a place on the website where you can ask questions and we can find resources for you.
That's great. Jane, Working Nation?
Same thing, Al, workingnation.org. Join us, get engaged. We tell stories, and our stories are not complete until we tell yours.
Thank you both so much for joining us today and taking the stigma away from disabilities in general.
So important.
That's so important, so people can see the strengths of people rather than the weaknesses of having disabilities. And really, thank you so much for joining us on the Workcred Expert Series on Morning Coffee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks